Have you ever solved a problem at work only to watch it come back wearing different clothes? A delay gets fixed, then shows up again somewhere else. A team issue gets addressed, but the tension keeps resurfacing. A new initiative gets launched with energy and optimism, and 6 months later, everyone is quietly asking, why are we here again? That's the one clearest sign that we're not dealing with a one-off issue. We're dealing with a system. And this is where a lot of leadership goes wrong. Leaders see what is visible, the missed deadlines, the underperforming person, the difficult stakeholder, the messy meeting, and they move quickly to fix the obvious thing in front of them, which is understandable. We all did that. But sometimes the issue is not the person, not the event, not even the project. Sometimes the issue is a set of conditions producing the pattern. And unless those conditions are changed, the patterns keep returning. That is what LD3, systems awareness, is all about. In the last video, we looked at impact awareness, how leadership lands on other people, and how trust flow, and candor shape the quality of relationships and decision making. Now we zoom out again, because once I can see myself clearly and understand my impact on others, the next level of leadership is this. Can I see the wider system clearly enough to intervene where it actually matters? Hello again, I'm Pietro Pazzi. I spent 30 years as an executive in global leadership roles. I saw brilliant leaders burn out, lose themselves, and hit invisible ceilings. I realized there was something missing, and it wasn't strategies or tactics. It was depth work on their inner operating system. So I returned to my training in psychosynthesis, and now I help leaders integrate their inner world with their leadership impact. The purpose of LD3 is this: to see systems forces clearly and intervene at leverage points, shifting conditions, not just pushing for better behavior. That phrase really matters. Shifting conditions and not just pushing for better behavior. Because when leaders lack system awareness, they often respond to reoccurring patterns by asking people to try harder, communicate better, collaborate more, take more ownership, be more accountable, work more cross-functionally. And sometimes that helps a bit. But if the incentives are wrong, the decision rights are muddy, the information flow is broken, the measures are distorted, and the informal norms are rewarding the wrong things, then asking people to behave better won't solve anything at all. You end up putting pressure on people to perform inside a system that keeps generating the same problems. And then everyone gets tired. Systems awareness helps a leader step back and ask, what is this system actually rewarding? What is it making easy? What is it making difficult? What patterns are completely predictable once you look at the structure? This is a very different way of seeing. And once you start seeing leadership this way, it becomes very hard to unsee it. In this model, LD3 is driven mainly by sense making. It is the primary capability, and it makes perfect sense. System awareness depends on a whole system view, long view thinking, discernment, viewpoint agility, and generative thinking. In plain English, it means being able to see patterns, not just events. It means not being trapped by the most recent crisis or the loudest voice in the room. A leader with strong sense-making can notice that what looks like 5 separate problems may actually be one repeated structure issue. They can hold complexity without rushing too fast into a neat but shallow answer. They can think in loops, not just lines. And that matters because systems rarely behave in tidy, simple ways. You change one thing here and something unexpected happens there. You solve for speed and quality drops. You tighten controls and initiatives disappear. You add more approval steps to reduce risk, and suddenly everything slows down and people start working around the process. That is system behavior. Now, LD3 also has an overlap with alignment. This is important because seeing the system clearly is not enough on its own. Insight has to become shared understanding and shared commitment. A leader may understand exactly what is happening, the bottlenecks, the competing incentives, the hidden power dynamics. But if they cannot build trust, communicate clearly, and mobilize stakeholders, then the insight stays trapped in their head. And we all know leaders like that. Very bright, very perceptive, quite right often, but low traction. Then there's the overlap with delivery. This is the capacity to translate insights into one upstream lever change, not just a set of observations or recommendations, and to follow through until the system actually shifts. That part is crucial because systems awareness is not an invitation to become abstract or endlessly analytical. It's not about standing at a flip chart and saying, oh yes, the systemic drivers are fascinating. It's about asking, what one condition can we change that might alter the pattern upstream? That's where leadership becomes super practical. A leader strong in LD3 tends to do several things really well. First, they identify what the system rewards, not what the company says it values, what it actually rewards. That might be speed over thoughtfulness, individual heroics over collaboration, short-term numbers over long-term health, risk avoidance over innovation. This is one of those slightly uncomfortable truths in organization. People follow incentives more than they follow speeches. So a systems-aware leader pays close attention to metrics, measures, recognition, promotional signals, and informal norms. Second, they map decision rights, information flow, and power dynamics, not just org charts. That distinction really matters because the org chart tells you who officially reports to whom. It doesn't tell you who really influences decisions. It doesn't show where information gets stuck. It doesn't reveal which approvals quietly slow everything down. It doesn't tell you who people are afraid to challenge. The systems-aware leader wants to know how things really move. Third, they anticipate second-order effects and long-view consequences. I think this is a mark of maturity. They don't only ask, will this solve the immediate issue? They also ask, what might this create 3 steps from now? That kind of thinking saves organizations from a lot of expensive overcorrection. Fourth, they use viewpoint agility to understand how different stakeholders interpret the same reality. This is one of my favorite ideas in this model, because in complex systems, people can be looking at the same situation and genuinely seeing different things. Finance sees control, sales sees delay, operations sees risk, product sees friction, HR sees culture, and the executive team sees strategy. A leader strong in LD3 can move between those perspectives without collapsing into confusion. They understand that reality in organizations is often contested not because people are difficult, but because they are located in different parts of the system. Fifth, they generate options that change conditions. Not just let's communicate better, not just people need to step up. They look at things like metrics, meeting rhythms, approval steps, decision right, escalation paths, cross-functional forums, feedback loops. That's a different level of intervention. 6, they reduce repeated problems over time. That may be one of the strongest signs of a good systems leader. There's less churn, less recycling of the same issue with new language, fewer rounds of why does this keep happening? The system begins to behave differently because some of the underlying conditions have been addressed and changed. And finally, they avoid over-personalizing systemic patterns. They don't just jump too quickly to this team is weak or that person is the problem when the same issues keep showing up across the structure. They understand that sometimes the kindest and most intelligent thing you can do is to stop blaming individuals for patterns the system itself is producing. When systems awareness is weak, few very familiar patterns tend to appear. The first is initiative churn. The new program, new language, new framework, new launch, a burst of activity, a lot of meetings, a decent slide deck, and then not much changes in the conditions. So, a few months later, another initiative appears to solve what the previous one never really touched. That's exhausting for everyone. The second pattern is symptom fixing and firefighting becoming the default. The team gets very good at dealing with the latest flare-up, but no one has time, or perhaps no one has the habit of stepping back and asking why the same fires keep starting. Over time, urgency becomes the norm. Firefighting becomes a competence, and the deeper pattern remains untouched. Third, leaders start blaming individuals for patterns produced by incentives and structures. This one is incredibly common. This team lacks accountability. That function is always difficult. People just need to collaborate more. Sometimes there's an individual issue, of course. But when the same complaint shows up again and again across people, roles, or teams, it is usually worth asking whether the structure is producing the behavior exactly that we are criticizing. And finally, there is the smart analysis with low traction. This is a classic overlap failure. The leader sees the problem well. They diagnose it so sharp. Their analysis is often impressive, but the insight doesn't translate into an upstream change or shared commitment or disciplined follow-through. So the system remains largely the same. The gap between seeing and shifting is where LD3 often gets stuck. So, systems awareness is the ability to see beyond isolated events and understand the forces shaping the pattern underneath. It helps a leader move from blame to diagnosis, from reaction to leverage, from repeated effort to meaningful shift. Without it, leadership gets trapped in symptom management. With it, leadership becomes more intelligent, more strategic, and far more effective over time. In the next video, we'll move to LD4, will and delivery. How leaders turn intention into action, make the hard calls, and follow through when resistance appears. If this perspective speaks to you and you want to develop your leadership from the inside out, explore my depth leadership coaching at pietropazzi.com. You can also book a 30-minute complimentary exploratory chat with me. You find both links in the description. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video.